Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a real close look at, well, basically a magnifying glass to the energy, the sweat, and the sheer willpower we pour into our everyday lives. Have you ever actually stopped to wonder exactly why we expend so much effort? We live in this hyper-fast world that constantly glorifies the daily grind. You know the drill. The early morning commutes, the late nights staring at a glowing laptop screen, those side hustles we somehow squeeze into our weekends. We're all pushing so hard, literally all the time. But today, we're going to fundamentally evaluate how we choose those battles. It is time to look at the real calculus of our choices.
So, here's the big question. Is everything difficult actually worth your time? We are so deeply conditioned by society to just assume that hard work mathematically equals a good result, right? The default setting we're all basically raised with is if it's tough, if it burns, if it requires major sacrifice, well then it must be important. But today's explainer is going to challenge that very assumption head-on. We're asking you to completely reevaluate where you put your own time and energy.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the calculus of worth, rethinking effort and reward.
To really rethink effort and reward, we have to look at a central, totally perspective-shifting axiom straight from our source material. Here it is. All valuable things are difficult to achieve, but the converse may not be true. Okay, let's dive into this, because it's a remarkably profound statement. It acknowledges the universal truth that, yeah, the absolute best things in life take real sweat and dedication. Building a career, raising a kid, mastering a complex skill, those are unequivocally hard. But the axiom brilliantly forces us to examine the second half of that equation.
Let's clearly define the logic of the converse here, so we're on the exact same page. The converse is this incredibly pervasive idea that every difficult thing is inherently valuable. And as our source explicitly points out, that is just mathematically false. We've inherited this idea through generations, honestly. It's this toxic mix of modern hustle culture and a very traditional work ethic that insists suffering somehow equals nobility. But listen, just because a task, a job, or a goal requires immense, grueling effort does not guarantee it holds even an ounce of true value for your life. Difficulty does not automatically mint value. I mean, actually, think about it like this. You could spend 10 years mastering a board game that literally nobody else plays. The struggle is very real, but the subjective life value? It's essentially zero.
And we see this trap everywhere in modern society. Not all enviable products or lifestyles are actually valuable life pursuits. We so often confuse the things that other people envy, the flash, the luxury, the perfect aesthetic, with the things that actually deserve our incredibly finite time and energy. Think about the pursuit of absolute perfection on social media, or working massive overtime for a whole year just to buy the absolute highest trim of a luxury vehicle, simply because it's the top tier. It is remarkably easy to completely burn yourself out chasing a difficult prize just because society labeled it as exclusive. The barrier to entry was high, so we automatically assume the reward must be deep. But is it?
Which brings us to Section 2, difficult and worth it, the undeniably valuable mountains.
Now that we've cleared away that false assumption, let's explore some specific examples from the source material. These are pursuits that are universally difficult but absolutely, unquestionably worth the struggle. Let's walk through these foundational elements of life: cultivating our physical health and well-being, managing our emotional and mental health, and building genuinely loving, caring relationships. Think about it. None of this happens by accident. None of it. They demand constant daily maintenance, deep patience, and, frankly, a lot of emotional labor. Nurturing a marriage through a really tough decade, or consistently choosing to process your mental health challenges rather than just bearing them, that is incredibly hard work. It takes a massive toll. But they represent the very bedrock of a fulfilling human experience. Their intrinsic value overwhelmingly justifies the monumental effort they require.
The source expands this list into our broader purpose too, doing the work we genuinely love and pursuing missions that make the world a better place. Those are hard paths for sure. They require risking failure and facing a ton of rejection. But now, what's really interesting about this next point is that final one, becoming wealthy and having the discipline to stay wealthy. That is a truly fascinating insight. It highlights the specific, completely unglamorous discipline required not just to hit a financial milestone, but to maintain that stability over a lifetime. Earning the money is one type of difficult, right? But quietly budgeting, investing consistently, and actively avoiding lifestyle creep when you finally have the money? Wow! That sustained effort is immensely valuable because it actively buys your future freedom.
All right, let's pivot to Section 3, the subjective difficulties, treadmills of questionable value.
Let's move over to these treadmills of questionable value. These are things that are incredibly hard to achieve, like they will literally eat up years of your life. But they offer highly subjective and sometimes entirely illusionary returns on your investment. Take buying an overpriced house or going on a very expensive vacation. Taking on a massive mortgage for a house that is simply way too big, or draining your hard-earned savings for a fleeting luxury trip to a five-star resort that requires literally years of hard work to afford. You're trading thousands of hours of your life for those things. But we have to look at this clinically. Does that massive exertion of effort truly pay off, or does it frequently just leave people house poor? Living in this giant, beautiful home, but constantly stressed, unable to sleep, running on absolute empty just to make the monthly payment.
And then we have the remaining subjective examples. Maintaining a lavish lifestyle that actively overruns your income, and buying really expensive cars, watches, or jewelry purely for the sake of showing off. The financial and mental effort required to keep up this facade is absolutely exhausting. It essentially becomes a second full-time job just to maintain the illusion of success. The trap here is so obvious, yet so many of us fall right into it. You're pouring immense life energy into mere status symbols designed strictly to impress people you probably don't even really know.
Let's bring it all together in Section 4, Discerning True Value, Comparing the Pursuits.
It is time to put these pursuits head-to-head so we can truly see the calculus at work, and this brilliantly illustrates the core conflict here. On one side, we have the goal of building a loving family and deeply caring relationships. On the other side, buying expensive watches or jewelry just to show off. Now, both of these paths require massive amounts of your time, focus, and resources, but the emotional contrast is staggering, isn't it? One builds a deeply fulfilling foundation of support that compounds over time, catching you when you fall. The other, well, it just buys a superficial status symbol that eventually gathers dust in a drawer and requires constant, expensive upgrades to maintain that same fleeting high.
Now let's contrast the financial effort. On one side, true wealth building and having the discipline to stay wealthy. On the other, a lavish, destructive lifestyle that overruns your income. Now, I want to pause here for a second, just to let you really reflect on this difference. One is the quiet, difficult work of creating actual freedom. It doesn't look flashy on social media at all, but man, it lets you sleep soundly at night. The other is a loud, chaotic scramble that keeps you permanently trapped on a treadmill, running faster and faster just to stay in the exact same place. They are both incredibly hard, but only one is truly valuable.
So the crucial point is summarized perfectly right here. Not every difficult thing is valuable to you, and not every difficult thing is actually worth your effort and time. This is the ultimate calculus of worth. Moving forward, you must systematically decouple the concept of difficulty from the concept of value in your own decision-making process. The framework is surprisingly simple. Before you commit to a grueling new project, a massive purchase, or a really demanding social obligation, ask yourself if you actually want the underlying outcome or if you just want the bragging rights of having survived the struggle.
I want to conclude our explainer today with this final, provocative thought. Ask yourself honestly, are you confusing a difficult lifestyle with a valuable one? It is so important to take a hard look at where you're spending your daily energy and ensure that the mountain you're climbing is actually one that deeply matters to you. Keep learning, keep questioning your path, and we'll see you next time.